Alright, now that we have finished our navigation menu, we're going to round out this section of the tutorial with inserting and styling the footer container. But before we do that, we are going to add one little snippet. We're going to add a section for our main content area, and we're not going to spend a lot of time with this. We're just going to get it in there. It's just a couple of different styles that we need to put in, so that way we can have that set up on the front side. But we're not going to spend a lot of time with it. But most of this tutorial will be dedicated to creating and styling the footer. So I'm going to switch over. You notice that I have my index file open on my portfolio. I'm going to switch over to our style sheet and scroll all the way down to the bottom and locate the end of that nav bar section. And we're going to start typing in our styles for the content area, and we're only going to add 2 styles for this. So I'm going to hit the enter return key a couple of times and type in a / asterisk, and then get my comment in there with a couple of dashes, and main content styles is what we're adding here, and asterisk, and then /. So that's my comment. And so we're actually gonna do this using classes. We'll be using these styles frequently in our content area. So most of the content containers that we're going to be creating will use the class instead of the ID. So I'm going to start with a period, and we're going to call this content main dash wrap dash top. So content dash main dash wrap dash top. So we're going to create multiple sections, multiple div containers within our content area. So this one will be the one that immediately follows the navigation section. And the reason for that is because of the fixed header that we've created. So I'm going to open up a curly brace, and I'm going to hit the enter return key, and this is going to be width, not width 100%. So this is going to continue as far as our screen will allow, and then hit the enter return key, and we're going to type in margin here, and this is where you need to do a little bit of math on your own. If you've set up some different values for your header section, you'll need to make the adjustments accordingly. So the top margin needs to go, because we have a fixed header, the top margin of this div container needs to be that same value as the height of our header. And actually we want to add about 15 pixels to that, so that we have a little bit of space between our main content area and our header. So if you remember, our header is about 200 pixels tall, so I'm going to make this 215 pixels tall, so that it spaces down 15 pixels below the top of the bottom of our header. And then our left value is auto, just as we would center it. Our bottom value is 0, and our right value is also auto. And I'm just going to end that statement with a semicolon, and then enter return and a curly brace. Before I go any further though, I want to add a quick comment here that will remind me later on that I need to use this particular class, class for the top of my my div container, and it looks like I've forgotten a semicolon after the 100% after the width there. So make sure I type that in. You notice that my left hand side there was red and indicating that something wasn't quite right. So I'm going to place this comment right after my opening curly brace, so it appears right next to that style, or right next to that name. So / asterisk, and then I'm only going to use 2 dashes for this one instead of the 4, and then I'm going to type in for content section immediately following the fixed header. And this will make sense later on as we get into more of our design here, but we just need to remember that this content area is what goes at the very top, right after our header container. And then next, right after that, we're going to type in our next. Remember, we're nesting things here, nesting our div containers. So this one's going to be content main dash contain. So kind of the same setup that we did with our header. And we're going to open that up with a curly brace. And we're going to first of all put in a clear here. So this is going to clear both from the top. This is just a general precaution to make sure we don't have any floating issues from our nav bar or anything like that. And hit the enter return key. We're going to type in width, and remember it's the 940 pixels wide, and margin is 0 and auto. So that'll center our content within our page there. And then I'm going to hit the enter return key and then right curly brace. I'm going to pop over real quick and insert this into my source code so that way I don't forget to do it later. So I'm going to locate the bottom part of our head wrapper there and hit the enter return key. And I'm going to go ahead and type in a left caret div class, and this is content main wrap top, so don't forget the top there, and enter return key left caret /, and then move your cursor up to line 42 there into that space we created, hit the tab button, and then left caret div class, and then we're looking for that content main contain, right caret, and then enter return key left caret /. So I'm just going to leave that there for now. I'm not going to do anything extra or add any spaces for right now. I'm just going to leave it so that way later on when I come back to it, it'll already be there waiting for me when I need to insert some content. So I'm going to go ahead and do a quick save, Control S there, or Command S, and then I'm going to pop back over into my style sheet. My cursor is still on line 91 there, so I'm going to hit the enter return key a couple of times, and we're going to type in our footer comment. So we're going to do the / asterisk, and then 4 hyphens, and then footer styles, and then 4 of those, space, and then /. Okay. We're going to follow up with the kind of the same outline here. We're going to create a wrapper for our footer. We're going to use an ID for this because we're only using this one time on our page. So foot dash wrap, and same procedure here. Width 100%, semicolon, and for here I want to push my this footer wrap just a little bit down so I have some spacing between my content area, and I want to do it here. I don't want to do it like say in my content area, so I'm going to go ahead and add, when I do my margin values, instead of just doing 0 auto, we're going to do a 30 pixels on top, and then auto for our right, and 0 for our bottom, and then auto for the left, semicolon there at the end, and then enter return key, and then background, we're going to go ahead and do a different color here. We're going to a little slightly different color than our header, just so we can distinguish the two. You could go ahead and do the same color as your header if you'd like, but I'm going to do just a slightly lighter gray than the darker gray that I have on my header at the top. And then I'm going to close this out with a right, hit the enter return key, and then close that style out with a right curly brace. Okay. Next, we're going to go ahead and add our foot contain, which will be that 940 pixels like we've been kind of continuously doing here. You're going to see a pattern throughout. We do a wrap and then we do our contain. So div ID is going to be foot contain, and then open up a curly brace, and this is width 940 pixels. And margin here is 0 and auto, so we're centering it. So 0 on the top and the bottom, and then auto left and right, so it centers it. And then we're also going to add some padding here, and I'm going to go ahead and do this in long form just in case we want to add padding later, but I don't think we will, but just in case. So you'll notice that I'm doing 0 on top, 0 on the right, but I want to add some padding on the bottom of our oops, and entered that semicolon too early. So you notice that the 60 pixels is on the bottom, so that's the bottom value. The third value is the bottom value. And the reason why I'm doing that is if your user scrolls all the way down your page, we want it to appear as if the footer is gray all the way down to the bottom. So this is just an easy fix, a quick fix, so that if your user scrolls all the way down to the bottom, they're still seeing a bunch of gray towards the bottom of their screen, and it looks like it's part of the footer. So that's all we need to do there. I'm going to hit the enter return key, and then close that out with a curly brace. Let's go ahead and pop over to our source code so we can start putting some of this in, because we're going to have a few different things to put into our footer this time. So I'm going to click on source code here, and I'm looking for that content area. I'm going to hit the enter return key, and one of the things that I'm going to do with this section, and in fact I think we should do it above our content area too, but I'm going to use our first clear, and we're going to do this just in case we have any content that wants to affect our content below it, which would be the footer content. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in a left caret, and we're going to type in BR for break, space, class, and then clear. This is a neat little trick that helps us kind of reset sections. So if we have any kind of inheritance floating issues from the section above, this takes care of it. So I'm going to / that, and then write class. And it's also nice to, it also helps you show and break up sections of your page easily. Okay, so just ignore that email above there. You know what? And what I also want to do is I want to add that same treatment right below our nav bar, right below our nav container. Even though we've cleared and we've set the content main wrap to clear, we're going to just be extra cautious to make sure we don't have any issues. So I'm going to highlight that line and hit Control C or Command C. Find that ending div tag underneath the nav wrap on line 42 on mine, and hit the enter return key. So I'm right in between the content main wrap top and the closing div tag of nav wrap. Let me just paste that in there. Okay, so back to our footer. Find that clear class or the break class that I just put in there that's clear. Place my cursor right at the end of that and hit the enter return key. And now we're going to put in our footer section. So left caret, div ID, and then foot wrap, right caret, enter return key 2 times so you give yourself a little space, left caret, / and then cursor line 50, tab in, left caret, div ID, foot contain, right caret, and then enter return key, left caret, /. So now that gives us a little bit of room in between there to enter our content. I'm going to pop back over to Mozilla Firefox here real quick. Have it down here. I just want to check out what we have going on. I'm going to show you, this is the completed example. You notice there's our little drop shadow if you can't see it when we scroll down. We go all the way down to the bottom and show you what we've got into our footer area. It's not much, it's pretty simple, but there's actually some elements in here that are going to give us a little bit of coding here to do for our styling. We have a copyright section, we have contacts like an email address, and on the right side we have some social media icons. Okay, we're going to talk about the social media piece in class, so don't worry about this section just yet. We're going to talk about what you can and can't do for that. But for this tutorial, I'm going to add these 4 icons, these 4 social media links in our footer. So the way this is broken down in our footer container is we have one section, just like our header. It floats to the left, and that's for our copyright. We have a copyright contain section, and then we have a social media section that floats after that. Okay, and we're gonna set our floats up in the footer area just slightly different than normal, because the content there, if you notice that it doesn't fill out that whole area, so it's going to look slightly different than a header. but the procedure will look and feel like very much the same thing. So I'm going to pop back over to my style sheet and locate where my foot contain is and hit the enter return key a couple times. So I'm on line 106. Check it out, you've already written over 100 lines of code, believe it or not. We're going to start off with a pound symbol here, and what this one's going to be called is going to be called copyright dash contain, and open up a curly brace there, enter return, and we're going to float it to the left, and the width of this bad boy is going to be 400 pixels wide. It doesn't need to be that wide. It's not going to work. It's only going to hold a little bit of text there. So then hit the enter return key and then right curly brace. We have two elements that we're going to use inside of this. We have an H1 element and we have an H2 element, and then also we have the email link to go along with that. So before we go any further, let's go ahead and put our footer container in there, and then our copyright container in there, and then also add our H1 and our H2, so then we can kind of see how this works and how this shapes out to be in just a sec. So I'm going to click over to my source code here, and my cursor is still in line 51 in between the foot ID contain. I'm going to tab in and then type in div ID copy right contain, and then right caret, hit the enter return key a couple times, left caret / and then I'm going to tab. So now I have my 3 nested div containers in there, and on line 52 I'm going to tab in, and I'm going to type in left caret H1 and then left caret / to close that out. And this is going to be our copyright piece. So I'm going to start off with the hitting the shift and ampersand symbol, number 7 key, because I want to find the copyright symbol. There it is. So if I type in ampersand COP, you should see the COP copyright symbol. So that's how you do symbols in the code part of it. You start with the ampersand and then you find the one that corresponds to the symbol that you need. And so this is just going to be like my name or your name. Since I'm kind of doing this whole one column design piece, although I have my name up here, I'm going to go ahead and put my name, copyright Jeremy Sinks, and then 2017 for the date. And then below that I'm going to do an H2 left caret / and normally this is where you're going to put an email address, like a contact information piece. We don't want you to use a personal email address, and even if you feel uncomfortable putting in your student email address, go ahead and still do this part, but then don't actually put in your real email address. And in fact, you can just use the hashtag if you'd like to make it act and look like an email. But don't put in your personal email by any means, please. So inside this H2, we're going to nest another element. It's the A element, and that's what gives us our link element for the email. So I'm going to type in a left caret A href. Okay, and since this is an email link, we start off with mail to colon and then our email address. I'm going to go ahead and put my email address in there. It's my work email address. I'm okay with that. Okay, and then right caret and then left caret / so it ends that statement there, or it ends that tag. And then I'm gonna with email addresses, it's really important in design here that you go ahead and list your email address and write it out. Don't just put your name in there and make it a clickable link. That's a kind of a pain if somebody's not using, because what happens when you click on this link, it automatically opens your default email program, and sometimes that might be what's created or made on the computer and not necessarily the one that you use all the time. So, and it's hard to get that exact email address without it being printed in there. So you'll see what we have here. We have an H1 we need to style, and we have an H2 that we need to style. And if I go back to our example real quick, the H1 here is black, and then our email link is white, and then when I hover over it, it underlines it for me. So I'm going to tab over here to my Dreamweaver again, and then click on our styles. So I need to spend a little bit of time styling that H1 and that H2 and then that A element for that piece. So I'm going to hit the enter return key. I'm on line 11 here and type in the pound symbol for copy, write, contain, H1 because I'm targeting the H1 element in that piece, left curly brace, enter return key, and we're going to position it using margin. I want it to be 30 pixels down from the top of that footer, just so it has some space in there. And then I'm going to go ahead and use the long form 0, 0, 0 everywhere else, just so it zeroes out all those other margin values, even though it's already done. Maybe down the road I might want to change that, so I'm just going to leave it that way so it's easy to change. And then the enter return key again. We're going to reduce the font size of this H1 to 1.2 ems. You can use pixel values if you'd like. And I don't want it to be bold, so I'm going to take the font weight down to normal, and that's just a stylistic preference for me on this piece. And then I'm going to hit the enter return key and then right curly brace. So following that is the H2 element that I need to style. And we don't need to do a ton with the H2 here because we're going to do some with the A too as well. So we're going to hit the enter return key, pound symbol, copyright, contain, H2, open up a curly brace, enter return key, and margin. We're going to do margin 15 pixels on the top, 0, 0, 0 all the way around on the other side, so we're pushing it down just slightly from the one above it. We're going to do the same font size as the H1 and font weight normal. Now, you guys might be asking, why did we use an H1 and an H2? Since that A element, we're going to style pretty much the color and everything else with it. We could have just wrapped our email address in the same tag as the H1, but the reason why I didn't is mainly because of this value right here. We've positioned the first one, the H1, a little bit further down, and I didn't want to position it with the same 30 pixels down as we did the first one, otherwise those would be pretty spread far apart. So that's why we're doing it as two separate headings, the H1 and H2, even though some of these things are very similar, like the font size and then font weight. Okay, so next we got to do the A element part of that, so we're going to part of the email link. So pound symbol, copyright, contain, A instead of the H2, just the A, and this is where we're going to change the color. So for me and my design, I'm going just to use white, so this is just going to have a white link color. And then I always like to eliminate the text underline piece for things like this. So text decoration is going to be none by default. A elements are underlined. And then enter return key and then right curly brace. And one more thing, we're going to add a hover property to that A element, and it's just going to be a simple one. We're going to do copyright contain again, A, and then I'm adding that pseudo class hover to the A element by using the colon, left curly brace, open that up, and then so when somebody hovers over this, we're going to do text decoration underline. So it's a nice little subtle way of showing that this is a link. When somebody hovers over it, it underlines as opposed to just being underlined all the time by default. Okay, let's go ahead and see how this looks before we move on to the next section real quick. We're going to pop over and preview in Firefox. Open that up. And we do have a problem. You're going to notice that I have my copyright symbol, but for some reason my other piece isn't showing up, my email link. And this is what happens when you start nesting element or div tags within each other. And this is also where our little handy clear class comes in. We can use it in the same way to fix this problem. So let's toggle back over to Dreamweaver, and in our source code, in our HTML code, what we want to find here is we want to find let's see, the the closing class here. So we're looking for, okay, there's that nested div right in there. That's what I'm looking for. So I want to put this right after this class. So I'm going to put my cursor actually right in front of that line on line 55. It's the second to last closing div tag there. So you know I have 3 closing div tags right in a row. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in the left caret break space class clear / right caret. I'm going to hit and save, and then I'm going to toggle over to Firefox and see if that took care of the problem for me. And there it does. And don't ask me why it does this, but it's just for some reason with nesting divs within each other, this is the type of scenario that we often see with that. So by adding that clear class, it pushed all the things down, pushed that down to where it should be, and now we see my email link, and when I place my cursor over it, it underlines it like it also should be. Last but not least, we want to add some links or some icons or images to our piece. So I'm going to toggle over to Dreamweaver again one more time, and I'm going to toggle over to our style sheet. And remember, with the copyright, we created a container for that, and we floated it left, and we only made it 400 pixels wide. Now we're going to do the same thing for the social media section that we have in our footer, but we're going to float it to the right instead, so that way our social media icons float all the way to the right rather than floating kind of in the middle, where what would happen if we floated it left, because we don't have enough content to float it all the way out. So I'm going to hit the enter return key after that copyright hover, and I'm on line 132. We're doing this as an ID again, so we're doing this as social media contain, open up a curly brace, and we're floating this right, so float right. Oops, hang on, didn't finish that out. There we go. Okay, and then width. So I've already, I have 4 social media icons. We're going to talk a little bit about which social media you should or shouldn't link up on this. We're going to leave that option up to you. With that being said, you might need to switch the value of that, because the value that I have that I inputted in here is based on 4 social media icons that I created, and they have there's a certain amount of spacing between each one, and the images themselves are a certain width, so you need to determine the width that you want to make for this and where you want to position it. So it's right about 280 pixels with the 4 that I have and the spacing that I have, which will be 10 pixels each in terms of the spacing. And I'm going to end that with a semicolon and then enter return key margin. Okay, and the reason why we're doing margin is so we can position these icons or this container below the top of that footer, so they're kind of looking like they're centered within our footer, and then 0, 0, 0 the rest of the way, so 30 pixels on top, same as our copyright contain H1 right there. Remember, we did a margin of 30 pixels for H1 up there, so we're going to do the same with our margin here. And enter return key, right curly brace. And then last but not least, we need to add a little bit of styling for the images that we're going to place in here. So we're gonna open up a ID here, social media contain, and then we're targeting the images, the image tag. So when we put in image, we're targeting specifically the image tag. Now we go back, left curly brace, enter return. So we're floating each of these images to the left so they appear horizontal or inline instead of vertical. And then we're going to space them out from each other too, so that they're not so close together. So we're going to do margin. We don't have to worry about the top or bottom part of that, but the left and right, we want to space them out 10 pixels. So just a quick reminder, this is the short form. So this 10 pixels stands for left and right. So that's adding 10 pixels to the left and to the right of each image. So if you guessed it right, if you put 2 images together, that means in between a couple of these images they're going to be 20 pixels spread out instead of just 10. Okay? So we're going to close that out, enter return key, and then right curly brace. Alright, that's all we have in terms of the styling part of this, but now we need to actually add all of our social media icons to the footer. So I'm going to save this real quick, switch over to our source code, and I need to locate the that copyright container that we put in. So there it is right there. I need to locate that closing div tag, and since I've nested or tabbed everything in, it's pretty easy to find, and it's right before that break class that we put in there. So I'm going to place my cursor right after that closing div, hit the enter return key, and then we're going to type in a left caret div id social media contain, select that, right caret, enter return key, left caret /, and then I'm going to place my cursor in between, tab in, and then I'm going to go ahead and add all of my images here. Here's how the structure is going to look. Before I add my images, I'm going to make sure that each of these images will link to a social media location. So I first start off with a left caret, ahref, and for the link placeholder I'm just going to put in a pound symbol for now. So if you are uncomfortable with putting in your actual social media link, and I totally understand that, then just put in a hashtag like I have. If you want to, what we think it would be a good idea though is for you to create a LinkedIn social media profile, and then left caret / to end that link out, and then move your cursor to the inside of those two carets there, and we're going to type in a left caret image src for source, and I'm going to go ahead and just leave that blank for now because I want to copy this line so I don't have to do so much typing. I'm going to fast forward a little bit, so I'm going to leave those quotation marks where they are, and then I'm going to type in a space and type in ALT for alt, which allows our blind users to read or see what that image might be if they have a screen reader. And then we're going to make sure we end that with a / right caret. So I want to just put that in there so I can copy this line over 3 more times, and then I'll go back and link up these images where they should be. So I'm going to hit Command Control C there, enter return key, paste that in there, paste that in there, paste that in there. So like I said, I have 4 different social media icons that I'm going to put in there, and I've already created those, so I'm just going to link those up right now. So to do that, I'm going to actually first start off with the Facebook one. So in the alt quotation marks, I'm going to just type in Facebook. The second one is going to be LinkedIn, so in that section I'm going to type in, I think LinkedIn is something like that. I might have spelled it right. I think it's that way. Okay. And then third is going to be Instagram. And then the fourth one is YouTube. Okay, so now I just need to link those. I just wanted to put the alts in there. So I got that taken care of, and then all I need to do is to delete the quotation marks out and then type the quotation marks back in, and then my code hint browse for file box comes back up, hit the enter return key, and then I can go and find those images. So the first one is my Facebook, and I just found these images using a Google search. I think there was like a free icon site that I just downloaded them from, modified them for my use. They were all PNGs. I changed the color on them. They started out as 512 in terms of size, and then I resized them, I think, down to 50 pixels each. So I'm going to hit that and see Instagram. There we go. And then last but not least, we have our YouTube. Alright, so let's double check to see. We have no red indicators over there. We've got everything where it should be. Let's go ahead and tab over to our Firefox piece and refresh our browser. I've saved everything. So if I hit refresh, those should pop in there. So there we go. And then when you hover over them, the hand icon shows that those go somewhere. Right now they don't, obviously, because I only put in the hashtag. if you want to put in your address in terms of the direct link to those, you would remove that hashtag by copying and pasting in the address to your Facebook account or your LinkedIn account. Again, we encourage you to not use a face or a social media account that you want to keep private off the airwaves, off the internet airwaves. The one that we do recommend that you would be safe in using would be the LinkedIn one, because that's a professional connection, and that's what this portfolio is all about. Is about professional connections, showing who you are, showcasing your talents, etc., etc. All right, so that about wraps up our layout. If you tab back over, we've pretty much got it all dialed in. We just need to work on our content piece. What's different with this year's portfolio, year 2 portfolio, is that each of our pages are slightly different and require slightly different scenarios in terms of layout and styling and all that kind of stuff. So if you look at that, like our home page is slightly different than our resume page. Although there's some similarities, we need to address each page individually, and we'll get to that. We're going to basically address each page styling with content as we go through it. So we're going to start off with, in the next tutorial, we're going to create all of our pages, and then we will start styling each individual page.